the students visit me. They bring lei and they hule and they sing. Sometimes they lean in close and they speak to me. They say, "Aloha, David Malo." They thank me for my example. Some of them tell me of their studies at the very school where I studied and taught. They whisper of their aspirations and they wonder if I hear them. They remember me as a scholar, a writer, a historian, even as a leader during a time of great change. Yes, but all of those things required me first to be a good listener. Imi, the seeking of knowledge, is a very important part of Hawaiian culture. My seeking began at a very early age and never ceased for as long as I lived. My training began with my grandfather, who was a kahuna. I was seen as a child of intelligence with an excellent memory. I was trained to listen intently to stories, histories, genealogies, and the chants of the ali'i. I recited these lessons to make this knowledge fast and to prove my mastery. Makahanaka ike. Through working, one learns. And I worked hard. I was married, young, to a woman who was many years my elder, as this was a common thing for an ali'i to take a younger man as her husband. Through this marriage, I was brought into the alo ali'i, the presence or the court of the ali'i. After my first wife passed away, I moved to Maui in 1823. I served along with Reverend William Richards in the alo ali'i of Keauhou. Together, he and I exchanged our ike, our knowledge. I became his Hawaiian language teacher, and he taught me about the Christian akua. I belong to the first generation of Hawaiians to learn the palapala, how to read and write. Through the palapala, we were able to share our thoughts and ideas swiftly between districts, between islands, from Hawaii to America to England. The beauty of our oli, our mele, our ka'au was passed down from generations of people like me who were trained to retain our stories orally and to deliver to future generations our mo'olelo, which continues to thrive. Or so I hope. Lahaina, at the time, was not at all a quiet town. Its harbor used as a frequent point of entry for new intrigue and conflict. I will tell you of one affair of consequence that I witnessed while there. Maui suffered a cannonading from Captain Clark of an English ship. Women were the grounds of the difficulty. Their names were Mikabako and Nakoko. The two women had gone to the ship for the purpose of prostitution. Now when the chief Ho'opili heard this, he asked the captain to return the women to the shore. The captain says to Ho'opili, "I do not know anything about them." So Ho'opili says to him, "Let my men go to your ship and search." The captain refused. So the next morning, when no women arrived, Ho'opili stopped the captain on the shore and took his boat away from the beach. That's when the cannonading began. Many cannonballs fell on Lahaina on that day. These skirmishes continued, brought about always by the conflict between the sailors who saw the port of Lahaina as a place of pleasure, the foreign citizens who resided there, and the laws of our ali'i. I became a link to these different people, and I sought to promote peaceful resolutions by using my knowledge of both our traditions and those of the foreigners. Another incident that took place was when the English consul threatened war. He said that he would put to death all the chiefs of Maui except for two, Nahi'ena and Keauhou. He also threatened war against Kaiki Oewa, the two of them came very near to having war on Kauai. The consul said to Keauhou, "Tell Keauhou to go by himself back to the mountains." He added that he would cut off Keauhou's head and demolish the fort, that he was by no means afraid to make war against the chiefs of the Sandwich Islands, for he believed that he had the power to put them all to death. Such was the troubles of those volatile days. I married again. This time to Pahia, who had taken the Christian name of Bathsheba. The two of us would be married for 23 years before she passed away after a lengthy illness. Shortly after she died, I took my pen in hand and I wrote for her a kaniko expressing my love. Ku'ua hine mai kaualilipua, mai kaualilipua he e koko, makaupili he e koko ula I ke kula, ua kaua ula vai ka naha e, naha ka avale ka pili me kauahine, ku'ua hine aloha I nalo akula, I hele ho'okahia hune. In 1831, when I entered the seminary at Lahainaluna as part of the first class of students, I was nearly 40 years old, and so was treated with some deference, as is our custom. I cared for my fellow students, helping them with their work, scolding them when they went astray, and loving them much. During my time at the seminary, there was great loss to the people of Hawaii. Our great queen, Keauhou, departed us in 1832. As she was my patron and the one who put me on my educational path, the loss of her guidance was for me immense. An ebbing tide flows out, laden with departing wealth. The chief is turning way, sinking to sleep, drifting away. She fled at the first gleam of the dawn, at the faint ending of the cut-off night. Oh, our beloved one, our departed one. The heart beats tumultuously. It throbs within us, it strains us, it breaks the walls around it. Oh, the pain, the breaking up, the rushing of tears, the falling of the flowers, scattered in grief. Words taken from my kaniko for Keauhou, my lament. After graduating from the seminary in 1835, at the age of 42, I stayed on at Lahainaluna as a teacher. Mr. Sheldon Dibble, who had been my instructor, bade a group of his advanced students to go forth and gather information from the most knowledgeable chiefs and elders. This information was then compiled into the volume Kamo'olelo Hawaii, the first book written in the Hawaiian language documenting ancient Hawaiian beliefs and cultural practices. But Reverend Dibble did not suppose this account to be free from mistakes, in that the material was gathered from oral histories, oral traditions, and so was marred by the errors of human judgment, and did not approach the accuracy of the Word of God. Memory was the only means possessed by our ancestors of preserving historical knowledge. It served in place of books and chronicles. What Reverend Dibble did not know, however, was that we were trained to ensure that our oral traditions were passed on correctly and completely. We listened and observed carefully. We were taught to structure our knowledge so as to be able to recall it easily. We were tested through public displays of knowledge recitation, even games and contests. Our traditions and stories are treasures discovered by our ancestors, a record of our past, providing us knowledge and guidance to act in the present day. But as Hawaiians faced disease and change, we began to use many different ways of preserving these traditions, like writing them down. So I began to write many articles for the newspapers, and I began to work on my own history book, also titled Kamo'olelo Hawaii, so that I could pass on my knowledge to the haumana of the future and record our past as I knew it. A great wave of change was sweeping throughout the islands. Things that once held fast held no longer. And more, we were caught in currents stronger than we knew. We had to learn how to navigate them. During this time, in the late 1830s, there was a great need to establish the first written constitution and code of laws for the Kingdom of Hawaii. We had to protect ourselves against the encroachment of foreigners and learn to navigate our relations with the rest of the world. I wrote a letter to Kina'u and Kekuanaua expressing my thoughts on this matter. I have been thinking that you ought to hold frequent meetings with all the chiefs to seek for that which will be of the greatest benefit to this country. You must not think that this is anything like olden times, that you are the only chiefs and can leave things as they are. This is the reason. If a big wave comes in, large fishes will come from the dark ocean, which you never saw before. And when they see the small fishes, they will eat them up. Such also is the case with large animals. They prey on the smaller ones. The ships of the white man have come, and smart people have arrived from great countries which you have never seen before. They know that our people are few in number, and living in a small country, they will eat us up. Such has always been the case with large countries. The small ones have been gobbled up. God has made known to us through the mouths of men, of the man of war, things that will lead us to prepare ourselves. Therefore, get your servant ready, who will help you when you need him. Hence, my colleague, Reverend Richards, was called to service to teach political economy to the ali'i. Now, these classes resulted in the Declaration of Rights in 1839. I and several other scholars made drafts of this document, which were incorporated into the 1840 Constitution, the kingdom's first. Now, I urged all of the ali'i to seek laws that were just, like the ali'i before them. You chiefs and stewards of the land, seek the thing that will benefit the people and alleviate the heavy burden on the poor. It is proper to lighten the great burden. Furthermore, put a stop to the abuses and establish good laws. A law is not good because it procures revenue, but because it brings about peace and security for all. That alone is what makes a law noble. Furthermore, do not inflict severe punishment on Hawaiians for their wrong, then let foreigners off lightly for theirs. Do not burden the commoners while being lenient with the ali'i. Do not treat the poor with severity while sparing your favorites. Here, rather, is the right thing to do. Equal severity and equal leniency from commoners to ali'i, from natives to foreigners. Now, this new constitution brought the ali'i, the commoners, and the foreigners under one law, and it formed the first steps towards establishing individual property ownership in Hawaii. These laws also guaranteed freedom of worship, putting an end to persecution based on religious opinion, and it formed, for the first time, a uniform system of taxation, abolishing all arbitrary taxes levied by individual chiefs, and it put an end to forced labor. But the adoption of these individual property rights, along with this new form of government, was not without their issues and problems. I was adamant that land should not be sold to foreigners, and many petitions came from Kona and Lahaina against the selling of our land. I also thought that foreigners should not hold high government positions, that these positions should be held by Hawaiians. These are linked issues, as illustrated by the Kona petitioners. Here are the things we think it would be good if you chiefs would be in agreement with us. You chiefs must not sell the lands to the haole, nor to all those belonging to foreign lands. The selling of lands to outsiders is not a wise course, the lands being a source of benefit to the government, the throne, and the Hawaiian people. If you wish to sell or lease, you should sell or lease them to us, your own people. By doing so, the lands remain under your control, and you will continue to reign over us and all the Hawaiian people, nor will your kingdom be taken along with everything in Hawaii. Now, I suppose that those students who visit me today may look upon these changes as the beginning of the end. Time gives the advantage of perspective, though the rough edges of specificity and accuracy are often worn away. Throughout the remainder of my life, I continued to seek. I sought ways to improve schools and help students as the general school agent overseeing 113 schools. I constantly had to work for what was right for teachers, making sure that they were paid the wages that were owed them for their important work. But then, in 1853, I would pass away. I instructed that I was to be buried above Lahainaluna on Pu'upa'upa'u. I thought that much of our land would come under the possession of foreigners. I thought that our graveyards, enriched with native bones, would be coveted, and the contents of its graves scattered abroad. I wish not my bones to be disturbed. Bury me upon that summit, where no white man will ever build his house. During my time among the living, I saw my Hawaiian people die in such great numbers. Not nameless faces, but my friends, my ali'i. There was no turning back the tide, only navigating those rushing waters. I see these students today, these current seekers of knowledge. I see them in their search for balance, maintaining our traditions, while also adapting their knowledge to navigate the changing world around them. To those students, I say that I will continue to listen, but you must continue to seek. Mahalo, my friends.